The time has come, fellow Tactics Ogre enjoyers. Today, Famitsu posted an interview with Yasumi Matsuno, as well as other leaders of the Tactics Ogre Reborn project. In this interview, we learn more about some of the changes coming to the Reborn version of the game, and we also get some more context as to why those changes have been made. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Let's discuss what we've learned. Before we start, I need to acknowledge the work of another. Although originally posted in Japanese, Twitter user DreamBoom posted some translated screenshots of the interview utilizing the DeepL translation software, and we're going to be looking at that translation here. Full credit to DreamBoom for posting this. I highly recommend you check out their profile if you're on Twitter and read through their analysis of the highlights of the article as well. They have some different insights and take interest in some points that I don't plan on covering in this video, so it's well worth your time to take a look. They post a lot of great info about Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy, and other JRPG content as well, so if you want to drop them a follow, check them out if you haven't already, you should. Links to both their profile and the original Famitsu article are in the description for those of you with knowledge in Japanese who want to read it for yourself. Also, if you notice any discrepancies in your own reading of the article versus the translated text that need to be addressed, do let us know, because I do not have the knowledge necessary in Japanese to do it for myself. Now, moving on to the full information that we have available to us here, I do want to note we won't be reading the whole of the translated article here, but instead I'll be presenting the information specific to the game itself that I find the most important and the changes that are coming to it. First off, Yasumi Matsuno discussed the change away from the class leveling system of the 2011 PSP release, back to the more traditional individual leveling system of older versions of the game. Mr. Matsuno stated that the class leveling system was the most unpopular in Wheel of Fortune, which is the Japanese title for the PSP release, so they decided to change the system back. To accommodate that change, an exercise function has been added to bases in the game, bringing back the quote-unquote training function of the past. Now, I should note here, I have not played the original version of Tactics Ogre. I have only played the 2011 PSP Let Us Cling Together remake, which did not include this training function, so I have no experience with it. But I have seen a lot of discussion, both from people who wish to see it return, as you apparently loved the mechanic, and from those who don't want to see it return, as they feel that it made the game too easy. Fortunately, for people who are concerned about the difficulty, Mr. Matsuno provided some additional context, stating that power leveling has also been introduced to quickly close the gap between your lowest leveled units and the rest of your team, stating it's not the best idea to invest too much time in this training mode. And again, for those who are worried that this will make the game too easy, Mr. Matsuno addressed those concerns as well. He confirmed that the Union level, which we've seen in some screenshots shown here, is the maximum possible level for your army at that time. No matter what you do, no matter how you grind, you will not be able to get any of your units past that level point, and will instead have to progress in the story to get higher levels. Interestingly, the point was made that the Union level will be slightly higher than the enemies that you'll be facing at the time, so you can grind a little bit if you'd like. That said, Matsuno apparently believes that Reborn will be more difficult than the 2011 release with these changes, and due to the changes to the AI that we will be discussing a little later on in the video. So, it might not be a bad idea, or at least if you're concerned about the difficulty of the game, it might not be a bad idea to have your team fully ground out to the maximum possible Union level. We don't know how the game has been balanced in that regard. It might be kind of expected that you'd be trying to reach that Union level as often as possible, but it's hard to say until we get our hands on the game. Finally, though, we have confirmation that the World and Coda content from the 2011 release will be in the game, which isn't really surprising, but it is nice to hear all the same. Moving on to more mechanics-focused discussions, we finally have gotten some more insight into the major changes coming to skills, spells, and items. The number of spells and skills in the game, as well as the number of items in the game, have been outright reduced, as there were apparently just too many. a sentiment which, frankly, I agree with. As the game went on, you would get all sorts of fun-looking new spells and pick up just loads and loads and loads of items that all had different uses. But at the end of the day, there was usually a couple elemental spells, a few buff spells, some heals, some debuff removers, some debuffers, and that was pretty much it. Like, there were so many spells that you could use, even within categories of, say, debuffing spells. You really didn't need or want much more than something like Paralytic Wave that would just take enemy actions away from time to time. And you got that at the start of the game. So they're simplifying that. We don't know exactly how they're doing this for skills, spells, or items, but it's a change that I think is very much needed. It just will smooth the gameplay out a lot. Not only will this make for a smoother experience, though, apparently it also allowed for improvements to the AI, as the AI now won't have to consider quite as many options in battle. It'll be able to make more informed decisions with a more limited skill set. Knowing these changes are happening makes the limited equip slots for spells and skills that we've seen make a lot more sense, and frankly makes me even more excited for the specialized builds that we'll be able to make. This is something that Matsuno also emphasized, that it will be very important for players to be particular about the skills that they equip, so I'm excited about that. It's going to be cool. As far as potential story additions and changes are concerned, it has been confirmed that there is no new story content, unlike the 2011 release. It is referenced that there are new characters and new plot lines and changes in some character relationships and things like that that were done for the 2011 release. None of that's happening here. Instead, changes have been made for the sake of the voiced script, with Matsuno stating that he focused more on the text that could be listened to than text that could be read, making tweaks to make that listening experience and that voiceover experience a little bit higher quality instead of just whatever it is that you would have been reading at the time. Matsuno stated that this was more a matter of personal preference and should not constitute any rewrites that players should be concerned about. It stated that this will allow the personalities of characters to become more apparent, with Matsuno using the pirate Azelstan as an example, and I know some folks have been worried about the possibility of extensive rewrites to the script. I've had that conversation with a few people in the comments, and I understand why the knowledge that tweaks are being made at all could make you distressed, could make you concerned, but Matsuno was very careful about stating that you don't need to be concerned, that these were just changes he made to make the voiced script flow better. So I don't think we need to worry about any sweeping changes happening. Does not seem like that's what's at play here. Finally, AI changes, double speed, and UI tweaks were discussed. The double speed mode is exactly as it says on the tin. All animations will play at double speed when you choose to use it. It will be toggleable, apparently. This obviously will be great for multiple playthroughs when you've already seen everything you want to see from the animations and are choosing to play through different routes for the story or try different strategies. And of course, it'll be great for grinding as well. The UI was also apparently modified to show all of your possible attacks at once between your weapon attacks, your spells, and your skills, taking into account things like range and how much mana you have to reduce the amount of menuing that you have to do. Honestly, I agree with that sentiment, and I think it's nice that they'll have made that change. There was so much clicking through menus in Let Us Cling Together, and that doesn't bother me, but I know it can be a drain on a lot of people, so I think that's a good change. As mentioned previously as well, the simplified spells and skills, as well as improved hardware and tweaks over the years, have apparently also made the AI much more competent and faster when it comes to decision making. Notably, this works for both yourself and the enemy, with Matsuno joking about how he would go and make himself a cup of coffee while he left his team on AI control to grind and level, stating that there should be no problem with the AI destroying the enemy for you, which is cool. I imagine it won't be quite so simple in full story battles that are typically a lot more in-depth and complex, but knowing that you can just go into a training battle or have a random encounter and just say, take care of it for me, that's nice. That's very nice. I have to say, I'm really pleased that Matsuno and the team took the time to give some more insight into the changes that have been made for Tactics Ogre Reborn. There was a lot that we were able to glean from the snippets that have been released, and of course, from the announcement trailer, we were able to do a whole in-depth analysis of that, but there was certainly more context that was required, and I think we've gotten a lot of that here. Of course, we need to get our hands on the game before I really draw any definitive conclusions, but my excitement's only growing. I personally like everything that we've heard here, especially the changes made to skills and spells. I think it's going to work very well for the game and for a modern audience, while still being fun and familiar for those of us who've played in the past. But what about you? Are there changes here that have been discussed that you're happy to see? Or what about things you're not so happy about? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. I loved the discussion that we had on the announcement video. I would really hope that we could have another similar discussion here. And what information are you still waiting on? I stated it again during my announcement video discussion video, but I'm still craving information about the crafting system. Does it exist? Has it been refined? Was it removed entirely? What effect will that have on your ability to get new gear? Because it was a huge part of late game gear acquisition. So we need to have that type of information, but with everything that we've already learned and the elaboration on things that have been shown to us already at this point, when the game still isn't going to be out for months, I think we're going to get a lot more information, and I'm very, very excited for that. Thank you again to DreamBoom on Twitter for translating this interview and making sure the fans of Tactics Ogre see it. Guys, seriously, make sure you check them out if you haven't already. As Tactics Ogre Reborn gets closer to launch, I'm sure we'll get even more information to go over, and I'll absolutely be doing so here. I'll also be covering the game once it launches, so if you want to stay on top of the news, maybe see some guides, or just hang out through some friendly gameplay, make sure you subscribe. Again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.